G-BT04 is finally releasing today, and this set is probably one of my favorite sets from the G format so far. It brings awesome support for Genesis, Angel Feather, Royal Paladin, Gear Chronicle, Shadow Paladin, and Mega Colony. I also have a proper mic setup now and the pop filter, so the quality that you should be hearing me in should be much better than before. So starting off, we're going to go into the same order as usual, and I'm going to start off with the Cray Elementals, and we only have one this time, but that's alright, and it's Dark Elemental Doxic. Its skill is an act, and it's a once per turn, and basically when you have a Vanguard with an LB5 ability, you turn that into an LB4 as long as this grade 1 is on the field. So this is really cool for cards like Glory Maelstrom or Glendios, where you can play this card to turn the Limit Break 5 into Limit Break 4, and then you can play the Limit Break Remover to make the Limit Break 5 be basically active whenever. So like for Glendios decks, this can be amazing. One thing I must mention is that in G-BT04 you have the chance to pull what fans have called the God Pack, which is basically a pack which contains 5 different strides in this amazing form. And yes, Primavera has not been pulled apparently yet, so she doesn't have an official sort of like unsampled image. So basically in the God Pack, you pull, for sure you will pull Phantom Blaster Dragon, Amnesty Messiah, or Guys Are Doomed, and Next Stage. And then, as the 5th card, you'll either get Chronos Command or Primavera, but those aren't worth that much, but they're still very awesome. And also, I don't know if you've seen yet, but the SPs in G-BT04 have carried on the same thing as from the Clan Booster, where they are full art, and like you don't see the sort of like the box of the text. So it's the same just like with the Bermudas, except they're not alternate arts, but I'm very glad they did that, and they look super amazing right now, so yeah. So since the cover card is Next Stage, we might as well start off with Gear Chronicle. They didn't get that many cards as a support, but the ones that they did get are amazing. First off, we'll go right into the cover card, which is a GR Chrono Dragon Next Stage. His skill basically makes Gear Chronicle have a Restander. At the end of the battle that he attacked, it's a GB2 ability, but that's fine, I mean that's easy to get. At the end of the battle that he attacked, you can counterblast 1 and Persona Flip in Next Stage, and then you discard 3 cards from your hand. And then, after he has battled, you put Next Stage back to your G-Zone, and you basically stand your Chrono Jet that is under the Next Stage. So you have to have a Chrono Jet Heart, but there are cards that help you have consistency in always having the Chrono Jet. So this gives Gear Chronicle a Restander, and that is really amazing. I feel like they really needed it, because in G-BT01, Gear Chronicle did have that hype, and they were played a lot, but they never really had that much they didn't have that many tournament results, and I think after Next Stage that should change a little bit. Moving on, we have a double rare, which is Upstream Dragon. His skill is alright. Basically when he attacks a Vanguard, you may have it gain plus 4k, and if you do, then at the end of the battle you have to put him back to your deck and search for grade 1 and call it in rest. So it's alright because you don't actually minus yourself, except that you lose on the 5k shield that the intercept could have provided. But it is alright if you're facing like, I don't know, something that's gonna retire you a lot, so instead of having your intercepts just die to retires, you can instead exchange them for grade 1s that might not be targeted. So he's alright. I'm not sure if you'll see that much play, but just as a concept, he's pretty cool. So I was talking about the Chrono Jet consistency, and this is where it is. Steam Fighter Bali. He's a rare, and basically his skill is when you stride on top of him, you can choose one of your Vanguards and give it the skill that when you stride, you can counterblast 1 and look for a Chrono Jet in your deck. You put it under your Vanguard as a heart, and you take Bali and put it on the bottom of your deck. So basically you exchange the heart to a Chrono Jet, so you'll always have a Chrono Jet. His other skill isn't that important. It's a rearguard skill, and it's a GB1, and when it hits, basically you just put back one of the opponent's rearguards in the front row. So it's alright, but just the consistency that he provides for Chrono Jet is really nice. There was a promo for Gear Chronicle which would let them unflip, but sadly it was pretty hard to get and it got pretty expensive because Gear Chronicle really needs the unflips, and it's no wonder it was so expensive. They decided to print a rare that also helps with the unflips, which is Steam Fighter Urnigin. Basically, once one of your opponent's rearguards is put back to their deck to an effect, if you have a Chrono Jet, you countercharge 1. It's only once per turn, but it's still really nice, and it is a GB1, but just having that unflip, which can really add consistency to the deck, is really, really nice. There's a grade 1 and a grade 2 that do the same thing in Gear Chronicle now, and I'll just show the grade 2, which is Steam Knight Calibum. Basically, when you call it, your opponent you choose one of your opponent's rear guards, and your opponent puts it back to deck. And then they have to look for something that is 1 grade less than that unit and call it. So basically, if you return their starter, they can't call anything. If you return a grade 1, they have to choose one of their triggers or other grade 0 units. So it's pretty good because you can get rid of pesky starters, like for good, for free, just for call. I mean, he does have 8k power, but it's alright. I think he's pretty good. He could see play. There is a grade 1 Silent Tom in for Thoughtful Gear Fox. He's 6k power grade 1, but on both Vanguard and Rearguard circles he has the skill, which are not GB restricted. When he attacks, your opponent cannot call grade 0 cards from hand to Guardian Circle. So it's a Silent Tom effect on grade 1. Sure, it's not as effective on grade 1, but I'm pretty sure like it can offer some really good pushing power. There is a new starter which I don't think we'll see that much play in Steam Worker Kuda. Basically, you put him in the soul and your Vanguard gets plus 5k, and then if it hits, you can rewind one of your opponent's units. I use rewind as the term to put back to bottom of the deck. So now that we've gone over Gear Chronicle, let's get into Shadow Paladin, which is the second GR treatment kind of clan of the set. And their GR is Supremacy Black Dragon Orgeyser Doomed. He's basically the same as the old Orgeyser, except you count +1 and you flip in an old Orgeyser. And then you retire 3 of your rear guards instead of 2. And then you look at top 2, and for each grade 1 or less, instead of getting plus 5k power, you retire units. So that's pretty good. Although you do have to retire 1 more card instead of just the 2, which you had with the old Orgeyser. And then if you have 3 or more face-up old Orgeyser dragons in your G-zone, then he also gets a critical. So it can be pretty good to stride Orgeyser and then stride Orgeyser Doomed after to get the crit as well. And I mean, you do get a lot of hand power, and there are a lot of cards in Shadows that count as 2 units when you retire them, so this card is pretty good. I quite like Orgeyser Doomed myself. Shadows did get that 1 critical trigger that gives 5k power to that specific card, so in this case it's Claret Sword Dragon. So basically when your Claret attacks, you put in the soul, you draw a card, and your Vanguard gets plus 5k. It's standard, it's just like every other critical trigger that we've had so far. Interesting little rare that you could use for budget Shadow Paladin decks is Overbearing Knight Gilvaze. His GB1 is a once per turn, you retire 2, and you get, this Vanguard gets plus 5k power, and then if he hits, you can retire 2 of your opponent's rear guards. So that's alright, but honestly I never see this hitting, so that's why I say it's only good for budget decks. However, when you stride, you can actually choose one of your... However, his other skill, when you stride, basically gives 5k power to the Vanguard, so he's really a budget choice. I don't think he's all that amazing, I don't think he'll see any competitive play, because his first skill is very risky and his second skill is not that rewarding. Claret as a deck itself got some support in Dark Pride and Dark Quartz Dragon. Dark Pride is a grade 2, and basically when he's retired due to an effect, if you have a grade 3 or greater Claret Sword, you can search your deck for a Dark Quartz Dragon, so the grade 1, you call it to Rearguard Circle, shuffle deck, and counter charge 1 if you called. And then Dark Quartz Dragon says when he's called, if you have a grade 3 or greater with Claret Sword in its name, then you choose your Vanguard and it gains plus 3000 power. So it's a nice little combo that Claret got. It's not something amazing, so I don't think the Claret deck is still going to be that relevant, but there is, like, it's possible, but I just don't think it's going to be with Dark Pride or Dark Quartz. There are 2 other generic Shadow Paladin cards that came out, which are Knight of Brawn Grozny, which goes together with Knight of Sagacity Gonvar, or Sagacity, I'm not sure. They basically have the same skill, but it's GB1. When a unit is called that is 1 grade less than this unit, then Grozny or the grade 1, they both gain plus 3000 power. So it's the same as the Revenger ones, except they're not, these 2 aren't restricted to Revengers, but they are restricted to GB1. And the final kind of generic Shadow Paladin card is Knight of Meditation Macnessa. It's a new starter. Basically, when he's retired from a unit's ability, you can count +1, and if you do, your Vanguard gets plus 5k until end of turn, and the skill that when it hits a Vanguard, you can retire 1 of your opponent's rear guards. So I guess it's a nice pressure skill, but I still don't think this is better than David or Judge Bow or Full Bow Brave. Shadow Paladin Witch has got an entire 2 cards of support, which is really sad because the archetype needs a lot more love than what it's getting. One of them is Witch of Secret Books Adra, and basically during your turn, if you have a Vanguard with Witch, and your opponent has 2 or more grade 0 rear guards, she becomes an 11k attacker, and if she hits, you countercharge 1 and soul charge 1. It's really not that amazing. I wish Witches would have gotten more good support, but I mean, at least her art is nice. The real good Witch card that I see is Witch's Familiar Kuroma. It's a grade 1 with 5k power. Basically, when you call it, you discard a witch from your hand, and then if you have a witch Vanguard and your opponent has 2 or more grade 0 rear guards, then you draw 2 cards. So it's sort of like a main, except the numbers are a bit nicer. It's a grade 1 with 5k this time, which is honestly not a bad number. It's like Luckbird. So I quite like this one. For witches, this is like the only good card I think that came out from the support. Moving on to the most played clan in the game, Royal Paladin. They got a new stride for Ult Mile, which is not restricted to having an Ult Mile heart, which is pretty cool. So basically, a skill is when you stride him, you G-Persona and Ult Mile, and then until end of turn, he gets the skill, the continuous skill, that all of the units in your front row get plus 3k. What this means is that if you use, let's say, Knight of Twin Sword to call out a new unit, then that unit will also get that plus 3k because that skill is continuous. Because if there's a continuous buff, then it's going to apply to anything that gets called out as long as that skill says until end of turn. So this is pretty cool. Then the second part of the skill is if you have 2 or more face-up G units, then you search your deck for a grade 2 card, call it, and it gets plus 5k. So honestly, I quite like Ult Mile. I think it's pretty good for the Royal Paladin decks. I would only really play him at 2. He's pretty good in Sanctuary Guard. He's pretty good in a lot of things. Like, of course, the Sanctuary Guard stride is still better, but I think for any other Royal Paladin deck that doesn't use Sanctuary Guard, this is a pretty good stride. I would run him at 2 at least. I think he's a really, really nice Royal Paladin stride. Now, moving on to the more Ult Mile restricted stuff, there is a really nice grade 1 in Knight of Reform Pier, and basically when you call a grade 2, if your Vanguard is Ult Mile, then you choose 2 units in the same column as this unit, and they get plus 2k until end of turn. So basically, if you have a nice column with Pier, it's gonna get like plus 4k buffs every time you call something. So it is pretty cool. It's good with Knight of Twin Sword and anything else that calls grade 2. So I quite like Pier. An interesting little tech is Techgal, and basically he's an 8k grade 2 whose GB1 lets him add his power to the unit in front of him. So basically he's an 8k booster that's grade 2. He's kind of interesting. I want to see him get used, but I'm not sure if he will. Like, I guess it's nice because you can use him both as an attacker and as a booster, but of course when you boost with him, it's GB1 restricted and you have to Soul Blast 1. But other than that, I quite like Techgal. I think it's pretty interesting. As if Sanctuary Guard did not have enough support, and as if it wasn't overplayed enough, we have Sanctuary Archer, which is an 11k attacker when you have a Sanctuary Guard Vanguard. And then basically when you call him, if you have a Sanctuary Guard Vanguard, then you counterblast 2 and you search for grade 1. Okay, that second skill is not that great because it's counterblast 2. Sword Meat does the same thing much better. Knight of Twin Sword does the same thing much better. Well, Knight of Twin Sword is restricted to grade 2s, but I don't know, counterblast 2 is a bit too much, so I'm glad that they didn't give any broken support to Sanctuary Guard because that deck is already way too relevant. It's always in every tournament. It's topping in Japan all the time. It's getting really annoying, so I don't know about you guys, but I'm a bit annoyed with Sanctuary Guard. Another interesting little grade 1 is Battlesong Angel. It has resist, and basically if you have 2 or more other grade 1s or less rear guards, then it's a 9k booster. And that's a continuous, so it's going to be 9k on your opponent's turn as well. So that's pretty cool, I guess. You can use it as a 9k attacker even, or 9k booster, whatever. And I quite like the fact that it's like the skill is continuous, although the resist could hurt against Shadow Paladin. And finally, there is one piece of Jewel Knight support, which is straight Jewel Knight, Bartram. He's a crit for Jewel Knights, and basically at the end of the turn, if your Vanguard is Jewel Knight and you have 3 or more other rear guards with Jewel Knight in their name, you draw a card, put him on top of your deck, and shuffle your deck. So he's just an equal exchange. He's pretty cool, I guess. You can actually put them back because if you don't run the Jewel Knight Legion, if you just run the sort of build for Jewel Knights, but then you run like Thinksaver or something, so he's quite alright. Finishing off the Try 3 clans, we're going into Neo Nectar, the waifu clan. So, well, for some people. So, I'm gonna go over Dream Spinning Ranunculus Asha first. She is a pretty interesting stride, and goddamn Maturity hit Asha hard. And goddamn Puberty hit Asha hard. So her skill is for free. You G-Persona, and she, at the end of until the end of turn, she gets the skill that you choose one of your rear guards, and if you have 2 or more rear guards with the same name as that unit, all units in the front row get plus 5k until end of turn. So not that unit, but just all of your units in the front row get plus 5k. However, this is an act skill, so only the units at the time of using this skill will get that plus 5k, because it is not a continuous skill. And then, if you have 2 or more face up in the G zone, you choose one of your rear guards and copy it, and then that unit gets plus 2k. So, she's pretty versatile, but I don't think she's as good as Jingle Flower Dragon, because that just gives huge global buffs. But Asha is pretty great. I like that she gives these nice buffs, and she does copy, so she basically does everything that the clan needs to do, and she has amazing art. Maiden of Trailing Rose got a legion called Maiden of Rambling Rose, and basically when you legion, you discard a card and you can search for 2 cards with the same name as a unit on your Vanguard circle. You reveal them, and you choose one of them, you put it into your hand and call the other one to a rearguard circle. So what you can do basically is when you legion, you can discard one, then you search for both Trailing Rose and Rambling Rose, and then you can, let's say, call the Trailing Rose and put the Rambling Rose in your hand, and then just rewrite it next turn. You should just keep legioning every turn. Her other skill is when she is ridden, you can Soul Blast 2, and then you copy one of your grade 1 or less rear guards and shuffle your deck. So she's alright. I still like the Asha deck more than the Trailing Rose deck, or Rambling Rose, whatever you want to call it, although her art is also really amazing. And the fact that you can legion basically every turn as long as you have Maiden of Trailing Rose is pretty awesome. So this is basically one of those Glimmer Breath dragons that Neonectar got in Flower Chamber Maiden Saliana. Basically, as a Glimmer Breath clone, she basically copies a unit and gives it plus 2k, but this is very good for Neonectar because that copying can be so good. It's even better than the one in the trial deck, I find, because you do it in main phase and you get the plus 2k boost, although the one in the trial deck does give you extra attacks, so it's kind of hard to debate which one's better, but I guess it just depends on how you plan on playing out the deck. And finally, for the foils, there's the usual critical trigger that each of the archetype kind of boss cards gets for Ranunculus instead of Asha, so there's that as well. There's a cool common grade 3 called Crystal Wind Dragon. It has a GB1, which is once per turn, and basically for counterblast 1, you choose one of your units, and then you choose 4 units with the same name as that unit, and they get plus 3k until end of turn. That is really good, because like you can choose a Via or a Sour Slicer, and just give 4 of them like boof, just huge boost. And the thing is, it's up to 4, so even if you have 3, you give them the plus 3k boost as well. So for one counterblast, that is really awesome. Other skill is when you ride Crystal Wing Dragon, you counterblast 1 and Soul Blast 1, and then you copy one of your grade 2 or less rear guards basically and shuffle your deck. So lots of copying. I feel like this should probably be a rare, honestly. This grade 1 is awesome and it's drawn by Daisuke Izuka, so I didn't actually notice that before, I'm just noticing now while commentating it, so it's a pretty good card. I honestly like it a lot. Interesting little tech grade 2, I guess, in Wisteria Knight. Basically, when he attacks and you have another Wisteria Knight on your rearguard circle, he becomes an 11k attacker, and if he hits, you can counterblast 1 to draw a card. Nice little pressure. 11k attacker is always nice, but I don't think you have enough space in your deck to play him. A tiny piece of support for the Maiden of Trailing Rose / Rambling Rose deck is Holy Hawk Knight. Basically, during your turn, if your Vanguard is in Legion, then he gets plus 2k for each of your rearguards with the same card name as a unit on your Vanguard circle. So for each like Rambling Rose or Trailing Rose you have on the field, this guy gets plus 2k for each. So you have 2, he becomes an 11k booster or attacker, so he's pretty good for the Legion deck. So I think if I played the Maiden of Trailing Rose or Rambling Rose deck, then I would definitely have him in there. Now we have Dango, 3 Apple Sisters, which is a 6k grade 1, but it's GB1, lets it get plus 2k and when it boosts for each other 3 Apple Sisters on your rearguard circle. So if you have like three Apple Sisters, then it's gonna boost for 10k because it says every other 3 Apple Sisters. So it's alright, it can make some nice numbers, but I think through the skills of the units like Jingle Flower and Asha, you're gonna be reaching good numbers anyway, so it's not that necessary. But I don't know, it's a cheerful card, I guess. The bugs are back, baby. God damn it, Coney got some really good support, and it's no wonder they're doing well with the machining deck already in Japan. So first I'm gonna go over Stun Beetle. This is the, I don't want to say main stride because we have something far worse in Fighter's Collection. But Stun Beetle, basically, he has a GB2 skill. Basically, when he hits, you can counterblast 2 and Persona Flip Stun Beetle. and then your opponent's Vanguard cannot stand during your opponent's next stand phase, and your opponent can't ride during your opponent's next ride phase. So basically, you completely lock them out for a turn if you hit. It's really, really, really good. However, the fact that you have to hit does add like this. It's really conditional, I guess. So that's what makes it not as great. But I still think that like as a 2-of or a 3-of in your G zone, this is pretty good because it can add so much pressure like on your first or second stride. But however, the skill does have an exception where you can ride by card effects. So like Metalboard Black Boy, you can ride by his effect. I always feel so bad saying that name. And you can also ride by, I don't know, Lose effect, anything that has like special effects that lead to a ride. So moving on, we have Intimidating Mutant with Dark Face, and this is the sort of GB2 grade 3 for Mega Colony. The GB2 skill is basically when your opponent calls a unit, you can Soul Blast 2 to rest it, which is like lol, like just the biggest like rejection. But his on-stride skill I find a lot nicer. Basically when you stride, you count loss 1, you choose 2 of your opponent's rear guards, you rest them, and then on your opponent's side of the field, they get the effect that if they're still resting at the end of your turn, as in like the opponent's turn, then your opponent may draw a card. So basically, if your opponent does not replace them, you're going to be drawing 2 cards off of his effect. And those rear guards cannot stand during your opponent's next stand phase, obviously. So they get stunned, and well, they get Giga Paralyzed, as it was called in the anime. They got a nice little rare stride in Paraspear. Basically, when you stride him, you rest all of your opponent's units, and then if they have 3 or more rested units, you draw a card and he gets plus 5k. It's pretty nice, you just draw a card for free basically, as long as your opponent has at least 2 rear guards. So it is pretty nice, and yeah, there's not that much to say for him. I think he can be seen in G-zones like once or twice, but not much more. But I have to point out, from Fighters Collection, Machining Destroyer is by far the best stride right now. Basically, when you stride on top of a Machining, you can count as 1 Machining, and then your opponent's Vanguard cannot stand in their next stand phase, and you stun one of their rear guards. However, the Vanguard not standing effect is only completed if you have 4 or more rear guards with Machining in their name. But this is easily accomplished by the old grade 3 from EB01, Machining Stack Beetle, which is a 10k, but when you ride it, you choose 2 Mega Colony with Machining from your soul, and you call them to separate rear guards in rest, and he gets power equal to what you called. So he's really nice, and there's a lot of cards in Machining now that combo around him. And thing is, like, you just keep replenishing your field, and you can immediately stride into Destroyer and lock your opponent's and then stun your opponent's Vanguard over and over again. So it's a really deadly combo in my opinion, and like I fought against it a few times, and it really does tend to get the best of me. Machining got a new Legion as well in Machining Scorpion Mark II, and he can Legion with either Machining Hornet Mark II or Machining Mosquito Mark II, so you can choose which Legion mate you want. And basically, if this unit is in Legion, he has an act skill where you count as 1 and you persona discard basically one of your either the grade 2 or the grade 3 of the Legions, and then you choose 3 cards with Machining from your soul, and you call them to separate rear guards as rest, and you increase his power by the power of the units that are called. So it's the same as Stag Beetle, but I think it's a bit more pricey and slightly ineffective because it's a Legion skill, so it really takes a lot longer than you want it to. His other skill is also an act where you put one of your Machining rear guards into your soul, and then you stand one of your rear guards, and you choose one of your opponent's rear guards, and they cannot stand during your opponent's next stand phase. So that second skill is a bit better, but I still feel he's a bit of an underwhelming Legion compared to the last one. His Legion mate, however, is really nice. When you have a Machining, during your turn, if you have a Machining Vanguard, and all your opponent's Vanguards and rear guards are at rest, then he becomes an 11k attacker and gets the skill that when his attack hits, you can stun one of your rear guards and stun one of your opponent's rear guards. This is really effective because it can add a lot of pressure, and generally it's a really nice card. The Amber clone from Mega Colony is Sweet Cocktail. Basically, same stuff as every Amber clone, but her version of the Amber clone skill is you stun one of your opponent's rear guards, and basically then you Giga Paralyze it. And they can also not intercept and not stand, and if they're still resting at the end of turn, your opponent draws a card. So it's just Giga Paralyzing, and it's very nice. So I quite like her, but I guess you don't see her in play in Machining decks that much, so yeah. They got a GB2 12k attacker if all of your opponent's vanguards and rearguards are at rest. But I mean, if you have the machining 12k attacker, there's no point for this. Then they got a 9k booster, which is GB1 if all of your opponent's units are at rest. They got an interesting other machining, which is 6k, but when it boosts a Vanguard with machining, then if all of your opponent's units are rested, then you can soul charge too. It's pretty nice because it can add to the awesome plays that you can make with Stack Beetle. I like the starter from Mega Colony, which is Crime Bug. Basically, GB1 you put into the soul, nothing else, and you choose one of your opponent's rearguards and stun it, and then they cannot intercept and they cannot stand next turn, so they sort of get Giga Paralyzed except you don't get the draw skill from it. Mega Colony got two interesting triggers. One is for machining and it's a critical. Basically when you call it, if your Vanguard is machining, you can loss 1, and then you can stand one of your other rearguards and stun one of your opponent's rearguards. So this is really nice to use with Stack Beetle, and it can make some nice combos, so I quite like it. And yeah, I can see this played in every single machining deck. And finally we have Earth Dreamer, which is a stand trigger. Basically you put on top of your deck, and at the beginning of your opponent's ride phase, if the number of rearguards at rest, if they have at least 3 rearguards in rest, then you can pay the cost, which is putting this card on top of your deck, and then you draw 2 cards. So he's pretty cool. I kind of like him, but you don't really see stands that much in Mega Colony anymore. 2 more clans remain, and these 2 are my favorite of the set. First up, I'm going to go with my slightly lesser favorite, which is Genesis. God, Genesis got amazing support, and they have also ruled out one of the lost conditions, which is decking out. Like, can you even imagine how amazing that is? Seriously, like, I love the new Genesis. Sadly, I'm too broke to play it, and my teammates playing it, so I don't really want to take it regardless. But Genesis is super, super good. First off, I'm going to go into their new main stride, which is Vanguard. Basically, he has an interesting pacing of skills, I want to call it. Basically, when you attack with it, you pay the cost, which is Soul Blasting 6 and Persona Flipping. Then, when you have declared the attack, and your opponent has guarded, at the beginning of the drive step, you look at 4 cards from the top of your deck, you put them in any order you want on top or bottom. So if you see, let's see, 3 triggers and 1 normal unit, you can put those 3 triggers on top of your deck and the normal unit on the bottom of your deck, or all of them on top. So, like, oh my god, this is really, really nice. You can make bluffs with this card, you can secure your numbers, you can outpredict your opponent, you can do so much. I really love Vanguard, and he's really, really good. I think, and his stride is really, the cost is so cheap. Soul Blasting 6 is nothing in the current meta of Genesis. It's nothing, absolutely nothing. Vanguard is amazing. It's such a good stride. Let's move into his non-rage form, I guess, which is Fenrir. He's the new boss grade 3, and he's super good as well. I'll go over his GB2. It's basically when you attack, you Soul Blast 3, and he gets Glory Skill and a critical, which is not that amazing on its own, but there is a grade 1 which helps him become a 21k glory with a critical every turn, so there is that. But his on-stride skill is really nice because as soon as you stride, you Soul Charge 3. Just Soul Charge 3. And then, when you Soul Blast, you can Counter Blast 1 to call one of the Soul Blast units out. Like, you can pick, whenever you Soul Blast, you can just go okay, Counter Blast 1, we're gonna call this grade 1 out. So this is really awesome because let's say, you really need some, all your good units went to your soul, and before this you could never really get them out of there, but now you just Counter Blast 1, and there you go, you have your units that you needed. So this is really nice. You can open up extra attacks, for example, you attack with everything, and then you use a skill to call out another attacker, like a grade 2, and then you have the starter, which I'm gonna get onto soon, which lets you call out another card, so you can call out an entire free column. So I like Fenrir a lot. I think he really lets you keep up the tempo of the deck because of his awesome Soul Charge skill. So yeah, the Amber Cologne is really good. It's Gleipnir, and basically it's same as always an Amber Cologne, but its skill is Soul Charge 3. And then if a card was Soul Blasted during this turn, you draw a card. So usually you would attack with this last, after you've already used Soul Blast skills. So, but it's nice because Soul Charge is 3 for Counter Blast 1, and you draw a card. So you make a lot of nice advantage and consistency with your Soul Charges. I have to mention a stride from Fighter's Collection, which is Doom Brace. Basically, skill is an act skill, but it's once per turn. You Soul Blast 3 and give 2 rearguards plus 5k. and then if the number of cards in your soul is 2 or less, you soul charge 3. So basically you stride him on top of Fenrir, and you soul charge 3. Then you soul blast those 3 to give 2 units plus 5k, and then if you didn't use the starter, you'll have 2 units in your soul, and then you can soul charge 3 for free. So basically, just you give 2 units a plus 5k buff for nothing. I really like that. So Doombrace is a really good first stride in my opinion. Another stride is Goddess of the Firmament, Dione, or Dione, and basically when she hits, you soul blast 3, then you look at top 3 cards of your deck, put 1 into your hand and the rest into your soul. So it's pretty good because you can play less draws now because both Gleipnir and this stride allow you to draw. There's a grade 2 and a grade 1 that are super good right now. They both have the GB1 and the same skill that when you soul blast a card, this unit gets plus 1k. This is both on a grade 2 that has 9k and a grade 1 that has 7k. And the grade 2 is Jormungand and the grade 1 is Hati. And basically Hati can go behind, for example, Fenrir, and when you use Fenrir's GB2 to soul blast 3, you can turn that column into a 21k with a crit and glory skill every turn while Hati is there. So I like these two a lot. They can also open up nice, like they add a lot of pressure, they hit huge numbers when you use Vanguard or some other grade 3 apart from Fenrir, so it's really awesome and I like them a lot. The starter is Lading. Basically you put him in the soul and then you give your Vanguard the skill that when you soul blast you can call out any card that was soul blasted as long as it's not Lading. Because the old print of this card allows you to call out anything, so then you can just abuse Lading, like put in Lading to call out Lading, and then you could just spam it with like Fortuna or something to just get huge power boosts. So it's good that it got limited to you can only soul blast, you can only call out something that is not Lading. A cool tech card is Claymore Harry. Basically, when you soul blast something, you can put that card on the bottom of your deck and countercharge 1, but it's only once per turn, so it's a good way to manage your soul blasts, and honestly, I really like it. It's a cool grade 1, you can play it 2 of and you'll get it pretty much every game. Basically, the new playstyle of Genesis is just hyper soul charging through your deck because of one card, which is Dreaming Dragon. This card says that at the end of your turn, you can put the stand trigger back to your deck, and it's a GB1 skill. If you do, you put all cards from your drop zone to your deck, shuffle your deck, and if 10 or more cards were returned, you draw a card. This invalidates decking out. This is so good. You can just power charge through your entire deck and then just like, okay, I have 5 cards left in deck, or like I have 6 or whatever. Just use Dreaming Dragon and boom, you're back to like 20-30 cards in your deck. Like, oh my god, this is so good. Just always keep one in the soul or in your hand, like for whenever you're gonna need to refresh your deck, because like, oh my god, this is really good. And it just allows you to play like Yatagarasu now, because sure, she's Soul Blast 9, but you're going to achieve that Soul Blast 9 so easily and you can abuse it, because no matter how much you soul charge and how fast, you're going to reset all of it with Dreaming Dragon. So when this card was revealed, I was going mental. I love it so much, and I think it's such a good stand trigger and just like the best card that Genesis could get in this set. I still haven't gone over the Witch support in this set, so there's 3 cards. There is a grade 2, which is the same as Witch of Ravens, except she gets plus 2k, so she gets called out and she gets becomes an 11k attacker, so she's not that special, but she's alright. There's a grade 1, which is Witch of Melenstein, and basically when you call her and your Vanguard is Witch, you go top 3, you put 1 into your soul and the rest into your drop zone. So this kind of allows you to speed up Legion, so that's kind of nice. It's not GB1 restricted either, so that is pretty cool. And finally, they did get a critical trigger, which basically you put it on top of your deck, you shuffle your deck, and if your Vanguard is a Witch, you draw a card and look at top 3, put 1 into the soul and the rest in the drop zone. So it's similar to the grade 1, but it is pretty cool. I quite like Shiroma, and Witches got a bit... Genesis Witches got better support than Shadow Paladin Witches, in my opinion. Okay, we're done with Genesis, we're done with every other clan except for my favorite from this set, which is Angel Feather. So there's a lot of reasons why I really like Angel Feather. One is that Hashimarin is like best girl, and then just Angel Feather, like I have a stupid history with Angel Feather where like every time they get support I try them and I fail to hell. Like I just couldn't learn Angel Feather for just at all. I just couldn't learn them at all until this support. When this support came out, when it was revealed, I was like, okay, I need to learn how to play Angel Feather. Like this is just getting out of hand. And I tried, I learned, and I loved it. It's so much fun to play. Like, it's one of the more complicated decks and clans in Vanguard, but playing it is really, really fun and rewarding. So that's my little history with Angel Feather and the reason why I picked it up and I built it. And honestly, it's like my second favorite like deck right now. So if not the favorite, but I mean, that's kind of pushing it, but it's definitely second. But let's get right into it. As always, I'll open up with the main stride, which is Raphael. It's a GB2 once per turn, and it's very simple. You Persona Flip, and you heal. That's it. That's all you do. It's simple, but it's good. When you're at 4 damage, you just heal back to 3, and you're out of that like risky danger zone where you can't face a Vanguard attack anymore. So she's really nice. Like, just having 6 heals in your deck basically at all times is like, wow. Like, yeah, if you have 4 of her in your G-Zone, you have 6 heals. Just always. You'll always have the possibility of healing at least 6 times, if not more. But let's move on to my favorite card in the entire clan. And honestly, like, if it wasn't for Daikaiser, I think she'd be like my favorite card in the game. And that's Black Shiver Gavrail. Her GB2 is the best GB2 I've seen in the game, honestly. Like, just, I have to say this, it's the best GB2. Basically, when a card is put into your damage zone, this unit gets a continuous skill. Continuous. This means that it will apply no matter if a unit is called out after the skill has procced. And that continuous skill says all of the units in your front row get plus 2000 attack. You know what this means? When you take damage, you get plus 2k. When that damage is a trigger, it's plus 7k, and it stacks. When you use skills during your main phase to swap damage, you're gonna get even more power. And it's gonna buff your entire front row, so it's not just the Vanguard that's gonna be hard to hit, but it's gonna be everything. This goes so well in hand with the no-CLs or the no-KLs. Like the grade 1 no-CL basically gives you so much defense on your opponent's turn. There's a grade 2 that I'm gonna go into soon that gives even more defense. Like, you're so offensive during your own turns and then so defensive on the opponent's turns. I love this GB2 so much, like, you guys don't even know. The on-stride skill is Counterblast 1, you look at top 3, you pick one, put into your damage zone face up, and then put the rest on the bottom of your deck in any order, and then you choose one face up card from your damage zone, and you call it, and it gets plus 2k. So this just adds into the whole, like, mindset that in Angel Feather your damage zone is your second hand, because you'd be calling from it all the time, and Gavrail is the best way to do that. So honestly, best card in the set for me. She's definitely number 1, and I love her so much. She's amazing. And also, I'm gonna go over a grade 2 that's coming up soon, and then I have to mention her GB2 again because it really applies with her. So Bushiroad is kind of attempting new ways to revive old cards, and Metatron is a good example of that, but I do not like the way that they make these revivals because it doesn't really make the old cards that important anymore. Basically, Crimson Aurora Metatron is a double rare, and grade 3. She has a limit break, and it's once per turn. You choose one of your rear guards and put it into your damage zone face up, and then you get a card from your damage zone and call it to rear guard circle. And then, if you have the old Metatron in your soul, that unit that you called gets plus 3k, and the skill that when it hits, you count as 1 and put that unit back in the damage zone, and then take another card from your damage zone and put it into your hand. So sure, it's pressure for hitting, but I don't know, it's alright, but it's nothing too great. Like, compared to other Angel Feather builds, this is really not that amazing. Her second skill is a bit better, it's also once per turn, and basically you choose one of your rear guards and put it into your soul, so you can put in the old Metatron for example, and then you choose a card from your soul, put it into your damage zone face up, and then you choose a card face up from your damage zone and call it. So it's alright, I like the second skill a bit more than the first one, but I find her a bit underwhelming. Quite a bit. Moving along, we have Black Slice Harut. This is the Amber clone. Basically, it's the same Amber clone conditions, but you look at top 2, and you put one in your damage zone and the other one on the bottom of your deck, and then you choose a card from your damage zone and call it to rear guard circle. This is where I have to mention Gavrail's GB2. If you're on Gavrail during your own turn, and let's say you use Harut, and then the new unit that you call, if you call it to the front row, like let's say you call a grade 2, it will get however much Gavrail's GB2 has stacked. So if you've swapped damage 6 times, and this is the 8th time, then that new unit that is being called is going to get plus 8k. just from the GB2 because it's a continuous skill. So I feel a lot of people might not know that and might not make the best out of their Angel Feather decks. So it is a continuous skill, so when you use Harut, the newly called unit is gonna get that power boost from Gavrail's GB2. I have to mention Holy Seraph Uriel from the Fighters Collection. It's a nice stride, which basically on hit, you look at top 3, put 1 into your damage zone, put the rest in your bottom of the deck, and then you call 1 from your damage zone on a rearguard circle. So it's just nice pressure, I quite like it. But there is a new stride in G-BT04, which is rare, called Holy Seraph Raziel, and holy shit is this amazing. When you stride it, you Soul Blast 2. And then you return all cards from your damage zone to your deck and shuffle it. And then for each card returned with this effect, you put the top card of your deck into your damage zone face up. This does so many things. First off, if you have everything already counterblasted, you can just refresh your entire damage zone just like that. Like if you have 5 damage, you just refresh 5. Second of all, when you stride this over Gavrail, you can first do Gavrail's skill to call something out. Like let's say a grade 1 Pegasus, or a Nurse of Broken Heart. And then you can do his Soul Blast 2 skill, which allows them to get huge boosts. If you have 5 damage, they get plus 10k boost. And I'm gonna go into Nurse of Broken Heart in a second, and I'll tell you why it goes so well with this deck. I have a picture on my Facebook page showing how big the numbers can go with this card. I'll just pop it in right here. It looks like, just look at that. It's just outrageous what this can do. It's like the best finisher that the deck has. But like, I don't know, I can't say anything bad about it except that you don't get crits, but I mean, you're already getting like huge columns, so there's really no reason to get crits. I'll quickly go over Nurse of Broken Heart. Basically, she has the similar skill to Gavrail. Basically, it's a GB1, and when a card is put into your damage zone, this unit and your Vanguard both get plus 2k. So, now, let's say you have 2 Nurse of Broken Hearts on your field. And you take a damage on your opponent's turn, and your Vanguard is on GB2 with Gavrail. So you take a damage, and it's a trigger. First of all, you're gonna get the 5k from the trigger on the Vanguard, for example. Then Gavrail's skill will proc, and it will give the entire front row plus 2k. So Nurse of Broken Heart is already 11, both of them, and Gavrail is now going to be 18k. And then the 2 Nurse of Broken Hearts proc their skill as well, giving the Vanguard an additional plus 4k. So 1 damage check will basically give you, 11k power. You're going to be sitting on 22 from 1 trigger in the damage if you have 2 Nurse of Broken Hearts. And don't forget, you can play a Nurse of Broken Heart in the back row as well, and the skill is still going to proc, and you can get even more defensive power. So the amount of defense that this deck can have is insane. I love it so much. And I'm going to be talking about Angel Feather for a while because we're already at like 9 minutes for this. God damn. So I'm going to go over some of the Celestials, although some aren't exclusively Celestial. One is a new Legion Accident Celestial Betarel. Basically, he can Legion with either his Model or Heal, which is the old Legion mate or the new Legion mate, so you have a choice, but I think the old one is a bit better. Anyway, when you ride her, you look at 3 cards, put 1 into your damage, and then put the rest in the drop zone, and then you choose 1 card from your damage zone and heal it. 1 face-up card, sorry. And then when she legions, you put the top card of your deck into your damage zone face up, and then you choose a face-up card from your damage zone and call it. And then if you have either the Legion or the Legion mate face up in the damage zone, that called unit gets plus 5k. It's better than the old Legion because it has this like utility option rather than just raw power, which the old Legion had. The Legion mate for this is Control Celestial Heal, I don't even know. But basically, when she attacks, if you have a Celestial Vanguard, she's an 11k attacker. And then if you have a face-up card in damage zone with the same card name as a unit on your Vanguard circle, she basically on hit countercharges 1 and soul charges 1. So it's pretty nice. It adds some pressure, but I don't think you have any space in the deck for her, unless you're playing full-on Celestials. The final Celestial is a crit trigger, which is Invert Celestial Asbiel. Basically, she has a damage zone skill that if your Vanguard is a Celestial, you can put her from the damage zone from the damage zone when she's face up on top of your deck. You shuffle your deck and reveal 3 cards from the top of your deck, and then you choose a card not named Invert Celestial Asbiel from among them and put into your damage zone face up and put the rest into your drop zone. So there is a chance that when you use her skill and you shuffle, you look at top 3, and if all of them are Asbiels, you've healed 1 for nothing. It's cool, like you can actually do that. So of course it's really you have to get really lucky to do that, but it's possible. It's really possible. So that's the last Celestial card that I'll be going over. Moving on more to the generic stuff, we have Doctoroid Premas, which kind of goes together with Medical Bomber Nurse. They have the same skill. Basically, when your other unit is placed on a rearguard circle from your damage zone, then you can counterblast 1, and from the damage zone you can call this card and put the top card of your deck into your damage zone. So both of them do the same, except Premas is in the set and Medical Bomber Nurse is a promo that you get from the sneak peek for the set. But they're both very nice. They can open up some cool defensive turns on your opponent's turn. So it's pretty cool, and also like they just make a free column basically for counterblast 2. So it's not exactly free, but they're pretty good. A sort of backup grade 3 is Mobile Ward Healing Palace. Basically, when it hits, you counterblast 1, look at top 3, put 1 to damage zone, and then the rest on the bottom of your deck, and then choose 1 from your damage zone and call it on the rearguard circle. So it's kind of the same as Uriel, except counterblast 1, and it's GB1, but it's active on both Vanguard and rearguard circles, so it's a pretty good pressure unit. Couple more cards I'll go into. One of them is Dreamlight Unicorn. He's kind of interesting. Basically, when you call him, you counterblast 1 and heal a card, and he also has resist, so you can call him behind your Vanguard, and then he's not going to get popped basically in any way. And then, so let's say you've healed, but when this unit leaves the rearguard circle, you look at top 2 cards, and you search 1 from among them and put into your damage zone and face up, and the other one goes on the bottom of your deck. So if it gets removed, like sure, if it doesn't get removed, you've healed 1, but if it does and you're 5 damage, you just lost because of that. So yeah, that's kind of, it's a double-edged sword, but I think there's not enough space in the deck to play such a risky card. Finally, we have the starter, which is Azrael. She's really nice. She's a GB1. You can almost 1 and put her in the soul, and then you put the top card of your deck into your damage zone face up, and then you take 1 card from your damage zone that is face up and put it into your hand. This is nice because you can take like grade 1 no-seals or perfect guards or whatever you need from your damage zone and just add them to your hand, so it's really nice. I like her a lot. Final card I'll go into for Angel Feather is Doctoroid Refros. This is a stand trigger and has an amazing skill. Basically, it's a GB1, and you counterblast 1 and put him on top of your deck. You choose 2 cards from your damage zone, put them on top of your deck, shuffle your deck, and for each card that you put back with this effect, you put the top card of your deck into your damage zone face up. So let's say you use a skill, you put back 2, and then you just shuffle, top deck 2 into damage, and then you draw a card. So it's really nice because it can help with Nurse of Broken Heart and stuff like that, and 1000 Ray Pegasus and Million Ray Pegasus, whatever you want. So it's a really good stand trigger, and I really, really like it. Oof. So this wraps up the set breakdown for G-BT04. My voice is dry as hell. This is going to be one long-ass video, but I hope you guys enjoyed. I tried to break everything down as much as possible. The clans I've playtested the most are obviously Angel Feather. I've playtested that like no tomorrow, and I've playtested a lot of Genesis. And I tried out everything that I talked about, so like I hope it helps you guys out as well. Also, regionals are still ongoing. Mine are actually tomorrow, so I'm going to be going with, well, you'll see in the coverage video, you'll see what I take. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it, and what else can I say? I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.